Want to get up to WFMY's studio in Greensboro because, listen, there's a whole lot of Duke in this lottery. 3 guys that we know are going to hear their names called tonight. Jalen Gilkey. Jalen, where's the Tar Heel blue, man?
Well, the only Tar Heel we're probably going to see drafted, whether it be tonight or tomorrow, is going to be the wing, the freshman from here in the Hoop State, Drake Powell. You know, if you look at their stat sheet, if you look at the Tar Heel stat sheet from this season, not a name that really sticks out per se when you're just looking at the numbers, but when you watch the games, you could feel his impact. He's a long, rangy wing, about 6'5", I do believe, and his wingspan is 7 foot plus. I just wrote that down today as well. We've learned, and we saw that he's a very good perimeter defender, kind of streaky from 3, but he's kind of projected out to be a 3-and-D guy for the Tar Heels. So I think Drake Powell is going to be the Tar Heel that has the best chance of hearing his name called over the next 48 hours.
And you cover these teams full-time in the Triangle, Jalen. How discerning is that for Carolina fans that, you know, a guy basically just taking the chance on his potential, didn't do much significant at all in his college season, is the only guy they may hear called tonight that wears Carolina blue?
Well, I think this is something that the Carolina Tar Heel faithful have been accustomed to, unfortunately. The last Tar Heel that was even drafted was Day'Ron Sharpe back in 2021. And here we are in the 2025 draft. And to say something like that about a blue blood program, you know, one of the greatest college basketball programs in the nation, just to say that their last draft pick was 4 years ago is a bit absurd. But unfortunately, I think this is kind of something that is par for the course for the Tar Heel fan base now. It just looks like the style of basketball that Carolina likes to play. They love to play 2 bigs. They love a ball-dominant guard. They run a lot of pick and roll, which is, you know, you see in the NBA. But again, with those 2 bigs out there, not necessarily stretched 4 or 5 guys that can shoot. It's a bit of an older school of brand and fashion of basketball right now. So that's why we're not seeing as many Tar Heels come out in the draft as of lately. And I took down some notes earlier today for you, Nick. The last Tar Heel that was drafted that has received any postseason accolades in the NBA, Kobe White, and that's when he made the 2nd team All-Rookie team in the 2019 draft.
I think that deserves a wow, like Kobe White. That's a great one, Jalen, man. That's crazy. And we just used to be we were so accustomed to, as you said, you know, every time an NBA team comes to Spectrum Center to play the Charlotte Hornets, it's loaded with Tar Heels. Duke it's not like Duke came out of nowhere here, right? But, you know, they are clearly dominating the recruiting in that area. Let's talk about the team in Winston-Salem that I know you cover too. Hunter Salas is an awfully talented kid. He was really fun to watch in college. What do you think his future holds in the next 2 nights?
Well, Hunter Salas is going to be a very interesting name because from what I've been reading is that a lot of NBA scouts, they either love him or they don't see a future for him in the NBA. So it just kind of depends on the fit and what it is that you see with him as a player. He's rangy. He's about 6'5", 6'6", ball-dominant guard. So he's a bigger guard, which fits in the game today in the NBA, as we see when you got guys like Wemby and Chet walking around with guard skills at 7+ feet. So you're always looking to have your lineup to have a lot of length and a lot of height. So he kind of checks that box. The one area that he really has to improve on is his 3-point shot, especially at that NBA depth. There is a lot of concern about how consistent his 3-point shot can be. However, there is a sign of optimism, is because during his 3 years in college, every year his free throw percentage went up. And so your free throw percentage is usually an indication of how pure of a shooter you are, how you work in the gym, and as well as just being able to repeat the same form over and over, which, as we know, is so important when it comes to shooting. So that is a ray of sunshine for Hunter Salas when it comes to his shots. Now, also, there's probably some questions about his shot selection as well. I would imagine that, you know, when he gets to the NBA level and he's on the floor with great talents, you know, such as Kyrie Irving or Anthony Davis say if he went to the Mavericks, right? You kind of will understand what his role is, and he knows, like, okay, I don't have to be that guy here. So, and most teams aren't going to look for him to have to carry them offensively. So I think that'll be smaller, a bit of a less of a concern for Hunter Salas. But I would love to see him get a shot just because he cares about the game and he loves the game. And you could tell by the way he plays that basketball is the most important thing in his life. And to see him get an opportunity to play on the largest stage that this game has, it would be special not only for him and his family as well, but for all of us that have watched him develop over these last few years at Wake.
All right, Jalen Gilkey, going to ask about one more guy. I want to go back to Chapel Hill. Clearly the heart and soul of the Tar Heels the last 5 years was point guard R.J. Davis. You know, to me, it just seems like he's one of those guys that, you know, you love in college and has a tough time having a long career in the NBA, but he can shoot. So what do you think his prospects are? And he's probably pretty clearly a day two guy, right?
Yeah, if that would be the best probably case scenario for R.J. Davis, would to be a day two guy. You know, again, going back to Carolina's play style, that older style, you know, there's a couple guys he reminds me of, and not per se his game, but just his build. And these are names that went through Carolina that ended up going in the first round, whether it be Ty Lawson or Ray Felton, right? If he played in the 2010s or before, R.J. Davis would be clear-cut a clear-cut first-round pick in this year's NBA draft. But just because of the trajectory of the game, he being a smaller guard, ball-dominant guard, with not a lot of speed, that's also going to affect his draft stock. He's great at creating space and getting his shot off, but is he going to be able to get to the basket? Is he going to be able to really separate from defenders, great defenders like Lou Dort, you know, who come in at 6'4", 240 pounds, built like a outside linebacker and move his feet like a cornerback? That's going to be those are tough matchups for R.J. Davis. And unfortunately, with that lack of speed and that lack of size, I just don't think R.J. Davis is going to be a guy that an NBA team calls his name over these next couple of days. It's just also, I think another thing with RJ is the fact that they were so dependent on him. Carolina, they didn't even allow for him to really blossom as a true point guard because they needed him to score so much. He had to be so ball dominant and then get the shot off as well. So the game that he kind of replicates right now is kind of like a Luka, but he doesn't have all the skill set as Luka. He doesn't shoot it as well as Luka. He's not as big as Luka. He's not as strong as Luka. And honestly, he's only probably a little bit faster than Luka. Defensively, they're probably the same. Going to be a bit of a liability as well. But again, the Tar Heels put so much on R.J. Davis's shoulders offensively. I can't blame him for not being a lockdown defender just because of the fact that he had to save everything he had to get every bucket of every game for Carolina to be successful.
As we saw in his last game in Milwaukee against Ole Miss in the NCAA tournament. Jalen, before I let you go, have you project a little bit because recruiting is so big in that area. You know, do the Tar Heels have anybody coming up that you know of that you could see a year or two from tonight being a lottery pick? And then we know Duke does, so who are some of the guys that they have that you could see in an NBA jersey as soon as 365 days from now?
You know, man, I'm going to be honest. At this point, I haven't really dove too deep into their upcoming recruiting class just because I just finished wrapping up with college baseball. So that's kind of my next objective as we get ready for the NFL season, college football. But I'm going to be honest, man, just because of the formula that Carolina has, I don't know if we're going to see another guy that's going to be able to be a first-round type of talent. Because, again, it's just not really what they've been producing. I can go back, I wrote something else down I thought was insane. Can you guess what year was the last time North Carolina had an NBA All-Star?
An NBA All-Star? 2016? I don't even have a name in mind.
It was 2007, 2008.
That's
Rasheed
crazy.
Wallace and Antoine Jameson.
Oh, my gosh. So, Antoine Jameson is a dad with a kid playing for Myers Park High School now. That's crazy.
I'm telling you, man. So they recruit a lot. They recruit a lot of great talent, a lot of guys that are successful at the college level, and it produces a lot of wins in the Ding Dome, and it's brought some national championships since that point as well, or at least trips to the Final Four. But when it comes to translating to the NBA level, I just don't think that's the most important thing in Carolina and Chapel Hill when it comes to guys they bring in. A guy they brought in who many thought had a lot of potential to hear his name called tonight in the first round was Ian Jackson. We saw how that worked out. It didn't. He ended up at the end of the year being kind of a rotational piece, 6th, 7th, 8th guy off the bench, and then he jumped in the portal, is going to St. John, where I'm sure his stock is going to rise next year under head coach Rick Pitino.
All right, Jalen Gilkey from the WFMY studios breaking down the Tar Heels, or lack thereof, Tar Heels flavor in this draft and what the future may hold. So Jalen, thank you very much for joining us, man. Enjoy the draft. We're going to bring it back here with my co-host, Jeremy Grandison. Jeremy, a couple guys, I'm thinking like the Boozer twins are guys we could maybe hear in the next draft. Charlotte's own Isaiah Evans, who stuck around for another year. I think that was a smart choice. You are of the ACC. So what are your generic thoughts on the lack of Carolina, man?
Carolina is known for having those veteran guys that you can immediately draft and have them give a lot of production, but also the chemistry and the fit and the mentality that a lot of NBA teams want. I think of guys like Harrison Barnes and guys like Tyler Hansborough. These guys are more polished. They're NBA ready when they're coming in. On the contrast, Duke players are more one and done-ish. They're more talent over experience. And I think that in a draft right now where people want to go younger and they want to go less on experience, that's maybe why we're not seeing as many Tar Heels right now.